Okay, guys, Victor Rodriguez from Bloody Elbow. What's up, Victor?
I am magnificent. You know why? Because I'm here hanging out with you, baby.
Oh,
That's what it
thank you,
is.
man. Pleasure's all mine too. I'm gonna say first of all, I'm really happy that ONE FC, One Championship, is now streaming live on Amazon Prime, and a bunch of us watched the second Demetrius Johnson fight, where he avenged his loss, and that was all. If you have Amazon Prime, guys, everyone, if you have Amazon Prime, you can watch ONE FC now when they have their live events in Singapore. So that's like the most exciting thing on my mind right now.
I mean, that's okay. So it's a little bit more complicated here. So I just want to parse this because I don't want to come across as being engaging in any kind of haterism, right? Yes, I have my history with one championship and all that, as far as
Hmm.
like stuff that they do that is less than savory. That
Hmm.
still stands, and I stand by what I said and what I've collected from my sources. That's fine.
Hmm.
But what I want to say is good on them for trying to have more of that expansion and reach. What I'm a little confused by is how this is supposed to work because I mean, last year they did the whole thing with TNT. They aired four events over the course of like a month or so. Um, is this actually better? I mean, is Amazon Prime as widespread? Um, I don't know if they're going to have the kind of reach that they would maybe expect. I don't know what kind of event fees they're getting paid by Amazon with this. I don't know that it's the come up that they might exactly want. I guess it's. I mean, it's good for us stateside if it's airing live and you're doing all that. But I mean, I haven't gotten around to watching it. All I saw was the Demetrius fight. I do actually want to check it out, regardless. I mean, I cover this stuff. I still enjoy the fights and I love the fighters, so I don't have any problem with that at all. I'm just a little like baffled by how okay is this really as big a thing um as having a partnership with I don't know some other outlet that would not have been maybe as limiting in terms of audience size and scope.
Yeah. And you make a very good point because I'll even tell you when I found out that it was on Amazon Prime, I went on Amazon Prime on my roommate's TV and I searched ONE FC and I couldn't even find the event. So just I'm thinking from a technical perspective, they need to improve their SEO because I had to search ONE FC live. If I only searched ONE FC, I couldn't even find the event. I had to search ONE FC live, and then I found the event that was going on live at that moment. So like, for anyone that works at ONE FC, please improve your SEO. That's my little gripe.
It may be more of an Amazon thing, but I do think it's a little weird because I thought the discrepancy would have been, you using ONE FC instead of one championship. Maybe I thought that's where the problem was, but if the problem was just not including the word live, again, that might be more of an Amazon situation. It might not even have anything to do with the people it want. It may not be
It
the
could be, yeah, it could be. I mean, the very little I've been studying AWS, so I've been studying how to use the back end of Amazon, and
mm,
I'm thinking it's probably some kind of keyword issue. So it's like a little bit Amazon's issue, but a little bit the user too, the
that makes sense.
client too, not using whatever service correctly.
Yeah, it could be
Yeah.
that. Well, whatever it is, I mean, I hope it gets fixed, and look, it could be good for them. And in a way, it's like, well, whatever their business model is and how well applied it is none of my business. Like, no, it kind of is because I mean, if
Hmm.
we're looking at the longevity of this, and if, you enjoy this, you want to have an ability to continue to see this. I'm curious. I want to see how long this lasts, and how exactly this happened. I mean, this isn't like some companies or some promotions will have a time buy where you
Yeah.
go to the network and they'll say, look, we'll pay you $2 million and you put our show on your network. And you can do that like World Series of Fighting used to do this with NBC Sports. There's other organizations. I think Bellator started with time buys, but eventually they see when the network sees how many sponsors you can attract and how many ad sales you can make on your own with an aggressive push and uh, and the momentum that can sustain, then you start to actually get money from that company. So I don't know if that's what's going on with one. If at some point the relationship changes, it very well may be that Amazon is paying them a fair, hefty fee, and maybe there's less consternation necessary because Amazon Prime might be more widespread than I think. Maybe there are more MMA fans that are. I mean, they wouldn't have made this move without some kind of research. Some kind of Amazon would not have just given them this kind of money without some signs. that there would be a degree of expansion in their viewer base. They could make that feasible.
Yeah, exactly. And I hope, like a lot of these changes get made so that way next event will have more people because I think I know I can say that probably the numbers weren't as high as they wanted. I can guarantee that. It's a lot of these things put together. So I hope the next event they're better at marketing it because again, I found out randomly. I found out randomly from a viewer. A viewer told me, "Hey, one championship, it's up right now," and I was like, "What? Why didn't I hear about it?" You know?
Well, it's weird because I mean I've seen it written about in other places. We did some of the not just the fight announcement, but we did just a couple of other minor things surrounding it. Especially, it helps when you have Mighty Mouse on card because not only is he the most visible of the larger and more recent acquisitions that they've had, but he's an absolute legend. He left the UFC on top. He was he's still very much of he's got a strong online presence. Yeah, it makes sense. But like, what do you do for the next event when you're trying to gear it towards American viewers?
Yeah.
You can't have Eddie Alvarez on every card.
Yeah,
You can't have John
exactly.
Lineker on every card. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're trying to not do that. Maybe they're just trying to appeal to having viewers more just like gravitate towards the brand and the variety of fights since they have the Muay Thai, kickboxing, and grappling stuff too. That's not just MMA.
Yeah, exactly. And it was actually the first time watching them. It was the first time I actually saw like small glove Muay Thai. That was pretty cool. You know,
It's badass.
and I wish the UFC would have some of that stuff. Like I wish the UFC varied it up a little bit. I mean, I love the UFC, but I wish they had some of the same types of kind of like variety that One Championship. So, guys, I'm not being paid by One Championship. I'm
No,
just saying like
no,
this is
no,
yeah.
no. I mean, I get it. It's just
Yeah.
it would be. I don't know that I'd want the UFC to do that. I don't know that they'd be capable of doing that and giving it the sort of shine that it would. I mean, they'd neglect some of their own divisions entirely sometimes. And so like imagine if they started implementing like kickboxing and then they'd have to keep those guys under contract and what would that look like? I don't know, man.
Mhm.
I don't think that would really vibe well. Like Ryzen has done stuff like that. They can do and get away with it. Shudo, for example, in Japan, they've done stuff like that. I mean, Deep can do that.
Yeah. Yeah,
This
exactly.
doesn't, but I mean, they could get away with that too. I guess it really matters on what the managerial thing and what are they selling you. MMA is the only thing that's being sold by the UFC, right? So much so that a lot of people don't know what MMA is, but they know what the UFC is, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
I might have used this example before. It's like there's people who don't listen to heavy metal, but they love Metallica.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just like there's this one thing that pushes through and transcends, and it kind of like it's a thing that people ride that wave. So people know who Conor McGregor is. They know what the UFC is, and when someone finds out if someone's a pro fighter, what's the first thing they ask them? Oh, you're in the UFC, right? It's like
Yeah.
that's kind of what that presence has, and it's because they've stuck to that particular formula. Whereas something like Ryzen, they can get away with having some kickboxing matches on their cards, or having what was it, Frank Shamrock and was it
Yeah.
Henzo Grace? I think had that grappling match. Like they can do that. It's
Yeah.
fine because it's a cultural thing. They're selling it to different audiences for different.
It's funny because like you mentioned Ryzen, and I don't even know what's happened to Ryzen. Like they've kind of fallen off the map for me. In fact, I go on their website and their connection's not even secure. So if anyone from Ryzen is watching this, make sure you check your website. Your website's not secure right now.
Somebody got to talk to them. But I don't know. I think they're. I I wanted to think at some point that maybe they were trying to appeal to a broader international audience, but they're doing like this thing where like it's catch release. Like some of these events are geared exclusively towards the local market, and then some of these other ones are like a little more of a broader deal because they had the Rise and Trigger events. Those came and went, and they were largely like they were fights in a cage, which Ryzen does not usually do.
Yeah.
And I guess it was kind of like we had Pride, and then you had Pride Bushido, right? You had like, yeah, but we specialize in the lower weight classes. It was like that kind of thing. I don't know. It didn't really click with me. I didn't really understand why they were going with this particular experimentation, or if
Yeah.
it's like, the sort of contract and stretch thing that KSW does, right? They'll have like the big circus themed event or the big disco themed event, and then they'll have like three events in a row that are like smaller, just action oriented,
Yeah.
tight It's, still super exciting, but just on a different level. I don't know if that's kind of what Ryzen does, and it's just way more lax. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
fun though. They still assemble some great matchups and have some extraordinary talent there, but
Yeah.
it seems like they're way more Japan focused and centered, and largely due to the pandemic and the way that things have been handled or mishandled.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's really truly awesome that we kind of just started talking about promotions, right? Because a lot of people like to watch fight commentary breakdowns because I like to find like very local underground promotions.
Mm.
And there was a promotion I found out of Europe called Helvetica. And this was something, Victor, I wanted to show you because you know, one thing I told them, and this is how I reached out to them. At first, they were kind of being a little bit more unorganized with their fights. Like they would fight in like a soccer field or fight in the grass. And then I
Mm.
basically saw that they started moving it into a gym or into a cage. So they're still underground, but they're being more safe about it. And I basically, how I reached out to them was I said, look, I'm really glad you're doing this because now you don't have any risk of running into trouble with YouTube, right? If you're holding a fight in like a potentially unsafe place, the YouTube censors might get to you. So now because they're holding stuff in a gym and there's a ref there, it's basically safe. It's like so like little things like that. Like if you're a promotion and you want to get promoted to
You
a more general
want to have a
mainstream,
bigger presence, yeah.
yeah, you have to in some ways like it's like a sacrifice, right? If you have this underground vibe, you keep it, but how do you make it safe and be underground? That's like a fun thing that I've been trying to think about because have you heard of King of the Streets?
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, King of the Streets is one of those like I wonder how long they're gonna last on YouTube, man. Like the
I okay, so I can't say too much about this because there's a lot of this that is somewhat speculative and a lot of
Mhm,
this that isn't entirely clear to me as of yet. So I don't want to speak out of turn.
mhm.
Uh, I was aware somebody put that on my radar, and I'm like, oh, this vibe is right up my alley because the production intros are like a fighting game, like
Yeah,
it's like a
yeah,
1998 PlayStation 1, like da, 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 you
yeah,
got the logos and the sweeping angles, like this is the arena and these are the guys, and it's like the freeze frame and the thing. I'm like, all right, okay, it's kind of dope, but something kind of like this wasn't really hanging right with me, and I'm seeing too many dudes with bandanas and covered faces, and that number one right there, that's like, look, you see enough on YouTube, you see enough online in general, especially if you see enough of Live Leak, you see somebody covering their face on a video, bad things are happening, or that person is doing bad things before or after that is happening.
yeah, yeah,
There is apparently some very strong evidence of potential either gang or hooligan activity.
yeah. Definitely,
I'm not saying
definitely.
that it's the organizers or the fighters, but there's some of those cats out there. There's been some problems with the whole King of the Streets deal, and I don't vibe with that, man. I'm waiting to see like what's going on, what's true and what ain't.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Like for me, King of the Streets, I covered them once, right? And they were really chill about it. And but that video, I don't remember if it got demonetized and remonetized by YouTube. But after that, I was like, okay, I'll just stay away from them. Not because I don't like them, but just because I know they're just on the cusp of always getting in trouble. And I don't know how their channel is there. But like you said, the sort of some of the other things I've noticed is it's exactly that. It's like you definitely get this vibe that some of the people in the crowd probably aren't the best people, for lack of a better word.
Hey, listen, look, and I understand when you get to the whole combo about like we're talking about the whole underground vibe, right? It's
Yeah,
grimy. It's this. I mean, King of Streets has a little bit of that. Like it's rough around the edges, but it's not dirty. Like you see that they're in a clean area and
yeah,
they're trying. It's a more modern. There's a bit of a sheen to it, and it still has that element of like this random danger.
yeah,
That's what it's for. When we talk about the underground, we're talking about a vibe. We're not talking about them literally being in the sewers like Demolition Man eating
yeah,
rat burgers. I'm just
yeah,
saying that there is something about like that this is not a sanctioned thing by any governing body of any form.
yeah,
Uh, these guys are probably not getting paid. These guys are probably getting paid very little. There's probably the less you ask about the provenance of said funds that would be given to these participants, the less you ask, the better. Like there's always that, right?
yeah,
But it's still a very, I mean, it's a cool concept, but then you start wondering, like, what the hell's going on with those guys? Is this like, again, look, I don't believe everything I hear, but I'm gonna err on the side of caution and be like, yeah, that's, I don't know. I don't know about those dudes. I just
Yeah.
don't.
Yeah, exactly. And there's actually a perfect time to use technology. So I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you can see my screen. So, we were talking about King of the Streets, or this King of the Streets, this the King of the
Yeah,
Street vibe. And then of course I started out with Combat Helvetica. You see how they started making it safer, right? So
yeah,
now it's in a gym, right? So there's mats. I think I've showed you this before. This is Pitbull
yeah.
Fan Club. So I've showed you them. This is
It's
very
the
underground
Argentinians.
vibe.
Yeah, we did that. We did
Yeah.
I included them in one of
Yeah.
your breakthroughs. That.
That's right. And then there's, of course, Karate Combat. Now, Karate Combat's a different story, right? They're trying to be very, very official. They're, super, super, super clean, although graffiti. But yeah, look at this. They got
Well,
Bosch Rutan here, GSP.
that graffiti isn't real. They
Oh.
got it. So what you're seeing there, they shoot all these in a studio. That's
Uh-huh.
green screen. All the backgrounds are green screen.
Oh,
So they're in
wow.
that same studio, and they'll have like the Cambodian temples in the
Uh-huh.
background, like the Roman cathedral. Like it doesn't matter. It's all shot at the same spot in LA.
Wow. I
Yeah,
see.
I'm a little. See, like they're fine. Something kind of weird about that whole,
Yeah.
um, their whole structure because they were gonna pay their fighters in crypto, which I don't
Oh,
like.
wow. Crypto,
Yeah,
eh? Uh-oh.
this was when they started. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna pay some of these dudes in crypto." I'm like,
Uh,
okay, that doesn't seem like something that has aged well. And I
yeah.
don't know. The guy who owns it is also like one of those crypto bros. And generally, if you are a crypto person, usually, I'm going to assume you have some other beliefs or opinions that I find a bit of a problem. I don't know,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. No,
I
I
also like,
totally agree with you. Here's the thing. I had this discussion with a cousin, okay? I have this cousin who's really into blockchain and all that. Dude, this is like music to my ears because he was trying to tell me so hard, dude, I need to spend more time into crypto. And I was like, this is really funny. Like, I was trying to tell him the same thing. I'm like, I was saying, like, if you're into crypto, I think there's things you need to think about. Like, no, let's keep talking about this. This is awesome.
no, I was just gonna say that the other thing that bugs me is I see a lot of Dominicans in karate combat and they're always getting knocked out. That don't sit too well with my spirit. I just
I
don't like,
see.
statistically one of these guys is gonna be related to me. I mean, I gotta stick up for my guy. But no, back to the crypto deal. I just when I see that, like the guy who you remember Bodog, right? Bodog for the younger whippersnappers was a gambling online sports thing that had back when the legality of online gambling was far murkier than it is now, and it was in fact something that was frowned upon in a lot of places in a lot of markets. He had to keep moving around. He ended up having an MMA organization. Chael Sonnen fought for them. Julie Kedzie fought for them. A whole bunch of people, and he ended up living on a like on or next to a golf course in Costa Rica, and they would have events like actually there or like on a beach. They were doing some really wild stuff back in the early to mid aughts. And that guy now, Calvin Ayre, I mean, multi-millionaire many times over, probably a billionaire. He's a super big crypto guy now. But then, there's also, unfortunately, a lot of people that uh, not only, okay, let me put it for you this way. Alex Jones has been getting a ton of money in crypto from some anonymous sources, anonymous donors. And it's like the anonymity, fine, whatever, but the blockchain is there and it doesn't forget, right? Like at some point, you might be able to find out who's been giving up that money. And you have to wonder, why is someone funneling millions and millions of dollars to this guy? There has been a lot of, I guess, under the radar stuff about how it's being used for money laundering and for really, really terrible people to move incredible amounts of money. And that gives me pause. That among many other things as far as crypto goes. Like I didn't want to, make this like a, the fuck you crypto hour or whatever. But like I just have so many reservations for something that's gotten so much attention. It's so many people have been had, and yet the last thing they'll do is actually use it as money. I mean, it's a problem, and the way that that's infected combat sports and martial arts, I find that to be not totally unexpected, given who the majority of the consumer base is and who this is geared to, and given who most of the managerial and ownership base is. of course this was going to happen. This is
Yeah.
just kind of what.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the fake money, sure. Well, the UFC giving out bonuses in crypto. That was just a few months ago. Is that going well now? When Francis Ngannou was saying, "Hey, when I got it, it was worth 50 grand. Now it's worth like a pair of Pumas." What am I looking at?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. He can't even buy himself a ticket to Senegal with that money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Um, Something related is just that, um, the whole promise of Web 3.0, again, this is just a very small little segue into that. The whole promise of Web 3.0 is that it was going to be secure, it was going to be decentralized and all that, but none of that's true.
None of
Like
that happened. No,
the
you're
whole
right.
crypto space, the whole Web 3.0, it's the same, people behind the scenes, the big organizations, the big companies, like the whole promise of decentralization, not there. And then it's not secure, man. For anyone that thinks all this is secure, like when I was taking a boot camp and the boot camp added a Web 3.0 section, the teacher's like, oh my God, this is a new thing. I got to teach everyone. The stuff she was recommending us check out was getting hacked. And she's like a pretty professional programmers. So I'm just telling you this story. One example, even the experts don't know. They're BSing. They don't know everything that's going on. And like the teacher was recommending me stuff and I started looking it up and I was like, this stuff's getting hacked. I'm not checking this stuff out. Like this is what I mean. Like
But
be
but
careful of any type of promises with Web 3.0. They're just not gonna be there. That's just
yeah,
my only warning for anyone. Like Web 3.0 is not as promised as it is.
if cryptocurrency were really all that in a bag of chips, people would be using it as actual money instead of hanging on to it and trying to use it as a get rich quick thing. And
Yeah.
and not only that, blockchain technology, neither new nor revolutionary. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, it's been
It,
around since
it's
the 90s
and it,
basically.
it has applications that are useful, but this particular thing, we're using all this processing power, consuming all this energy, cooking the planet even further,
Yeah.
right? The fact that there is the anonymity promise is not what it was,
Yeah.
or at least as it was promised, as you mentioned. And then there's just I don't quite understand how people can see all of that and think that this is like it's just a thing that's good. We're going to keep riding this thing. If you just keep hanging on, by the time you hear about a lot of these coins and a lot of these pushes, it's all you're going to be the one left holding the bag. The people that have been making that money are the people who get in first, just like everything else. That's why I used to hear people talk about we're looking for the next Facebook, the next Google, the next Twitter. Like, no, when you build anything that's slightly competitive or that is of any value to these companies, they're going to buy your company. You're
Yeah.
not making a new anything because the people who got in first, okay, those are the people that you see that happening with a lot of stuff in MMA. Some of the people who got in on the ground floor were able to make certain amounts of progress, but then some of the other later hanger on, they're not doing too great. If you're
Yeah.
starting a new organization now, it's not the same as it would be 5, 10, 15 years ago. There's always that sort of roadblock that gets, you got to go even bigger, harder, and be more creative with things.
Yeah.
Um, people questioning the provenance of where funding comes from for some of these organizations. And we've had, I mean, you can ask that question of so many companies in combat sports and in martial arts in general. That's a real shame because this is where we get to. We're talking about this whole the Web 3 thing, and some people might be thinking again, like, well, we came here to talk about punchy face. You know what I mean? Dudes in long pants throwing flourishing kicks. Like, no, man, this stuff is very much intertwined now
Yeah. Yeah.
with what we have in the martial arts world. You have martial arts competitors that are taking sponsorship money in cryptocurrency, right? They're being paid with NFTs. They're having NFTs made, or they're investing in it themselves.
Yeah.
Heinisch, massive crypto guy, right? I'm watching Markel Martin, the manager. He's pushing NFTs and stuff every once in a while, even after things have gone south.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I
And a
just
bunch of UFC events were sponsored by crypto.com from my memory.
that
So,
well, that's like the kind of contract that you have for a stadium, like City
yeah.
Field.
Yeah.
Like they pay that one fee, and now it's called City Field. It'll probably change names later if they sell the
Yeah.
rights elsewhere. But the fact that Crypto.com went so hard with the UFC, with the Staples Center, it's you think, wow, these dudes got a lot of money and a lot of push. You got to remember, they don't have to pay as much as you might think
Yeah.
for that because they're not buying a part of the company. This is just
Yeah,
an
exactly.
Yeah, and what happened to Crypto.com? They pushed Matt Damon in front of the world, and everybody started buying in. And where are they now?
Yeah, nobody's heard of them for a while.
I mean, the only thing you're hearing out of them is that sound of the balloon deflating, real
Yeah.
slow with that hiss.
And the recent news, they actually transferred like 100 million into a woman's account or something. I think that was them. I have to check my source real quickly.
You getting it back?
Yeah,
You getting
exactly.
it back? Not if it's me.
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure it was them. I'm gonna check right now to make sure I'm not. Yeah, exactly. They accidentally sent 7.2 million in a refund.
Nah, I'll take it. Give me that money. You won't be
Yeah,
hearing. I mean, you would be hearing from me. I would be doing stuff like this.
yeah,
7.2 million. I probably wouldn't work another day in my life. But I'd be
yeah,
chilling, man. I'd just be running from one spot to the next.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
wow, I don't know. How did you find out he was in Bhutan? Like, I don't know, somebody ordered Dominican food out here. We don't eat that shit. I don't know who this is.
Yeah.
It must have been him. Yeah.
Exactly. And then my final kind of rant about crypto is just that I think a lot of people might watch this talk and a lot of people follow Victor and Bloody Elbow from around the world, right? Just be careful because Web 3.0 promises a lot of kind of international or globalization or whatever, but you got to look at your country's laws too, okay? Don't like go in on crypto if your country's not chill with it. Like you got to because this when it comes to global trade you really have to be careful. So that's my last PSA for everyone. Make sure you look up the laws a little bit. Don't be like accidentally exchanging crypto or doing business in another country and then finding out, oh, this country doesn't allow it or something. Like just be
Yeah.
careful.
You're like those people that got the those Elon Musk flamethrowers, and then they found out, oh, if I deliver it to Germany, I might go to prison. It's illegal here.
Yeah,
Whatever country it is. But I was gonna say, not as a small addendum to that. Yeah, make sure that you can also find a way to actually like capitalize on it. Like you can retrieve that money if things, because that's outside of the control of a lot of people. But we've seen how a lot of these exchanges have been like, they as soon as the feds start investigating or they start getting into a solvency trouble, they're like, oh, by the way, you can't pull out your money.
yeah,
And now I'm seeing all these other people going like, wait, what do you mean? I
yeah,
got I got my kid's college fund in there. What do you mean I can't take out my 140?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then you got to wonder what's going to happen. They're not FDIC insured. You ain't seeing that money. It's
yeah,
gone. You might as well give that money to me. Because
yeah,
no bullshit. I would have put it in an index fund, at least made you like some margin off it.
yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. So
Everybody, yeah. Yeah.
the
Everybody wants to
parting
gamble.
word I'll give people is tulip mania. Look that up, and then you'll see how history repeats itself. Tulip mania.
No, I like the joke that crypto people are doing a speed run of the world history of economics and banking.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
it's like, oh, now you're discovering that maybe this is why we need regulation because somebody, oh, they stole all my apes. Like, you wanted decentralization. If the main pull of this whole gimmick was that it was, and this is kind of an inverse of that, but if the whole point was about decentralization and not having to be under the purview of all these major banks, and how come all these major banks are also into it? That automatically shows that this thing fell on its face a long time ago. You missed the boat, King. You thought you were making money. Nah. The people that are going to make all that big money off it already did.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. Man, um, wow, this is great, man. Victor, it's so good to kind of catch up with you again.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Hey, the doom and gloom times can be actually rather, decent. It's not bad.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
glad to bring the mood up.
yeah. I'll kind of update anyone that who's joined us since the last conversation. So, last time I didn't have braces yet, right? I don't think I had
No, I
braces
don't
yet
think you
last
did.
time.
No.
Yeah,
How's
so
that
after
going?
getting braces, I couldn't really spar anymore. So I had to like switch up my training. So now I just do capoeira because like if you train capoeira safely, you're not trying to like actually kick each other in the face, right? So I just do capoeira, and like as a person that's done a lot of different martial arts, I'm not the type who's like, oh yeah, capoeira is the best thing ever. Oh my god, it'll teach me how to. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it because I want to learn how to move better, right? That's why I'm doing capoeira. So, but you definitely and I love my classes, but you can tell there's a few people in my classes who like they've never sparred and they don't understand that sometimes you might trigger someone who, let's say, has sparred based on how you dance with them in a hoda, right? And this is something I guess anyone that does capoeira is something to keep in mind. Like, not everyone, a hoda is like when they do the dancing thing at the end of class, the dance that kind of looks like a fight and stuff. But like, not everyone you train with is just a dancer, right? Some people have fought or some people have sparred. So you got to be careful how you escalate it. And this is something that my capoeira professor, he's very Brazilian, so it's hard for him to express some of these things, but he's always saying, relax, relax, with his Brazilian accent. He's trying to tell you, there's dancing and there's no, he's trying to explain like there's different ways you can play capoeira, right? So you can be very chill about it, dance, let them express themselves, but then it can always escalate to a fight. So he's trying to explain that to people, but through the cultural barriers and the language barriers and just in general, a lot of the people in capoeira class have never sparred, so they don't understand what he's trying to say. But I had an incident where, it's the beginning of the hoda. Usually in the beginning of the hoda, you're not supposed to be too crazy anyways. And the guy just kicks me. And he didn't kick me hard, but, you're not supposed to hit each other.
I'm
like,
sorry,
at least in the beginning of the hoda.
he meant to actually kick, like
Yeah, he
straight.
meant to actually, he kicked me. So I grew a smile on my face. I was like, oh, I literally smiled. I'm like,
Jeez.
so you want to spar? And I very gently sparred him. I didn't even do anything. I wasn't being a jerk about it. He kicked me. So, okay, I'm going to contact you. And that's when you see like the difference. Because the moment I pressured him a little, he just fell apart. Like he tried to do what's called a vingativa. It's like a takedown in capoeira. But because he's never really sparred, by me giving him a little pressure, I just caused him to crumble. He literally fell to the ground because he wasn't used to pressure being applied back. And
No.
so, like, I technically dropped him, but I wasn't trying to, and I didn't hurt him. I just literally made him fall because he was off balance. He doesn't know how to stand up to someone who actually is resisting. And so he comes at me. I literally just put out a push frame, and he just falls in the ground.
Then yeah, that takedown wasn't worth a damn if he
Yeah,
fell.
exactly. And part of it is you didn't practice it under pressure, right? So like you don't understand if someone actually holds their frame, oh wow, okay, maybe you have to do this a little differently. But like I like to tell the story because like this is an example of you got to be careful. If you kick a guy even softly when you're not supposed to actually make contact with him, his interpretation of what this is now is going to change. And like, I never thought I'd be one of these people, but I realized, people know I'm a Muay Thai guy in there. So occasionally there would just be some people who just contact me. And I used to let it go, but then I'm like, okay, I think I need to enforce these things because I can't let them pull these things on me because what if they do it on the wrong person in the future? Like you've seen videos of capoeira fights all the time. One person does something, suddenly they really start fighting. It's like I don't want my training environment to be like that, especially since I got braces. I can't take a punch to the face, so I have to enforce once in a while. And this is something I want to discuss with you because what I'm training is like the verge of like an dance art versus a martial art. Like, capoeira can be used if you train it correctly to be an MMA, etc. But I'm training them more for the dance part of it. So like, where do you balance kind of the expression versus the movement versus the sparring versus all of that? So this is like a fun topic that it would be perfect to discuss.
Yeah, well, it's a little more complicated as we're addressing capoeira, which is an art that can be used solely and purely as art. In the sense, like what you said, the term you use is expressing yourself. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you're not aiming to actually fight someone with this. You're really just using. Yes, it is an extension and manifestation of combat through less conventional means, but it's still it is still a cultural element that is to be celebrated, and that's kind of where like you have your people that are there for that. Just like for example in jujitsu or Muay Thai, there's people that just do it for fun. They're not looking to be they're not looking to be at Lumpini Stadium. They're not trying to be, on some K1 show. They're just there for the fun, and some of those cats they can hang with the pros. We've seen that happen. Every in every MMA gym there's a story of somebody who's like, yeah, that guy, he was not, he didn't go to he didn't wrestle in high school or college, but you put him in there against the wrestlers and gives him a good, he's a good sparring partner for them. He gives them a good go. You never know when you're gonna find some just naturally crazy, skilled, talented person, or someone just picks up on something and is able to like obsessively sharpen that and make it. something more serious. So, you know, the hobbyist, you know, if they're dedicated enough, that hobbyist, you know, might catch somebody that's thinking about doing a little more than just hobby stuff, and really end up having a bit of a lesson. And I like when you say the word enforce. I mean, obviously, you don't mean in any sort of brusque way. I mean, you're sort of like you're just establishing. The way I'm interpreting that is just you establishing a boundary,
Yeah, exactly.
just some minor resistance to, like, you know, kind of like, oh, no, let's reset here and reestablish this relationship
Yeah.
as it should be. I mean, you should be able to trust your sparring partner. The problem is that, you know, when is this person actually sparring? Again, capoeira is a different vibe. You
Yeah.
know, it's an art I respect, like any other. It just, well, like any other good one. I just don't, you know, it's not maybe the most practical for fighting. So it's kind of weird when I see somebody doing anything like that. That things start to kind of get a little more physical than they ought to, and sort
Yeah.
of like a setting. And
Yeah.
that happens. Like, yeah, I mean, I don't really see any problem with that. I mean, I guess it's like, you know, if you're in a Muay Thai scenario and you got a guy who's getting a little too crazy with the kicks, and you know he's nailing your leg kicks. He's nailing. Okay, you know what? I'm going to start checking these a little further back now.
Yeah.
See how they like it. You know,
Yeah.
they
Exactly.
might not, or maybe instead of just checking it, I'll check it and hit him with a cross that he might not be expecting, but I'll tap him. You know, we've
Yeah.
seen that happen. We've seen
Yeah.
that happen. Sometimes you will have guys that are in a pro scenario, but again, it all depends on what you're looking for. Um, and what you're looking at, because really it all comes down to intent and how receptive that person is to being
Yeah.
like, shit, I
Yeah.
get it.
Yeah. And the reason I bring this up, and I called one of my kickboxing coaches, he moved to Colorado, so I don't train with him anymore. But I wanted to talk to him about this because, again, like how I established the boundary, I didn't try to hurt him. I was like, okay, you touch me, I'll slightly touch you too. You know, that's how I did it. I'm like, I escalate based on how you escalate. So it's not like he touched me, oh, I'm gonna knock you out. I'm not doing that. I'm not,
No, no,
you
no,
know,
no,
you
no.
touch
We're
me,
not.
okay, I'll
No.
touch you a little just to see how you feel, right? Like
Yeah,
that's my interpretation because I've let it go at least 2 or 3 times where they touched me and I was like, okay, you touched me, it's fine. I'm new to the class. Maybe this is how it is. But then eventually I realized, okay, I don't think that's how it is. Like
yeah.
if
It's
the
not happening
boundary
anywhere
was you're
else.
not touching each other, hey, don't let them touch you either. If they touch you,
Yeah,
okay, they have to understand it's escalating.
yeah. No, it's like you observe too. Like, hey, you know, how come the only person? Am I the only clumsy one that's getting like in the way of your particular strikes, or what? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? Where does that? Where does that start? Where does that end? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And like I've heard horror stories, not at my school, but other capoeira schools where you know that very famous half crescent kick where their hands on the ground, the one that can knock out. I've heard horror stories of people like not aiming it, just throwing it because you know they're not used to someone actually reacting and it actually connecting. And literally, if that kick connects, one, it can knock you out, but two, horror stories, it can knock your teeth through your cheek. It can actually, like, if you get hit with that, you can actually break your cheek. And I've seen people with that scar of their teeth going through their cheek, and like so they have a scar here. So like this is an example of things you don't want happening in capoeira practice. Like these kicks can be deadly if thrown right. That's why you see people like Marcus Lelo Aurelio, like these capoeiristas training in MMA, like knocking people out with capoeira kicks. So like just because it's a dance, it's fun, doesn't mean people can't like forget the safety part of it. And that's something that started cringing me out almost immediately about capoeira. I'm like, okay, you're on a wooden floor usually. So that already, okay, you got to be careful, right? And then there's potential takedowns happening. There's like crazy kicks happening. Okay, you have to establish a boundary quickly with people because if they mistime anything and you're in like a fun mode and they mistime, you could get hurt.
Yeah, I mean, you probably could. I mean, I guess it's one of those deals where, like, if you don't have some kind of formal combat sports background, if you haven't been in like a boxing sparring situation, you can easily be caught one of those things. Because I think, like, instinctually, sometimes you're gonna was like, oh shit, you know, like sometimes you develop a better sense of like, oh, something's coming, and you duck out the way, right? I'm not saying everybody's that coordinated. I mean, we see that happen where people have been sparring and, you know, Muay Thai or kickboxing or whatever forever, and they still don't see him coming. But I do think you develop some sort of base, or, you know, some kind of instinct like you had, right? Where it's just like you saw that thing was coming, you reacted a certain way, like, I don't want any more damage coming my way, but you also knew your body kind of knew how to react to, like, let me stop further damage from coming, you know?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
much
So
part.
And this is, you do jujitsu mostly, Victor, and I know in jujitsu, for example, you always will occasionally have like one or two people who like try to spaz, like especially if they're new. That's just one of the things you guys have to deal with too.
Yeah, so I haven't trained in like 2 years now at this point. I mean, since the pandemic hit, but excuse me, sorry. Yeah, there's always that. We always, and it doesn't, people always make those jokes about white belts and all, but it's not just white belts. I mean, there are people that have this whole go, 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 go thing. And it's a little tougher to deal with. It's a little tougher to slow those people down and be like, oh no, 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 buddy, we ain't doing all that today. Let's chill out there, young gun. Hold on, like we're gonna grab your collar and frame and like pin this down and pull this here, and like now you start using some of the things where this person's relying on their physicality in order to get things ahead. You really need to fall back and make sure your technique is good enough to stop that, because that is ostensibly the purpose of all of this, right? I mean, when we deal with a newer person whose technique isn't as sharp and they start doing that, like, all right, well, I guess we're gonna have to, shut down your shortcuts and explain. And this is another thing too. Like, this is why I've always liked training with women. Having a woman as a sparring partner, because they got to get that out of their system early. A lot of the women, most of the women, unfortunately, are at a bit of a physical disadvantage. I mean, I'm strong enough to hang with most of the men. I mean, because I'm just like I'm just a very, very strong dude, especially for my frame. Um, I gotta put that on the back burner when I'm training with women. It's like, no, no, no. It's technique. Let's not force this. Let's not muscle this. Because and I've always had that appreciation for that. The only difference is, it's the same as part of the guy. You just gotta watch where your hands are at all times. Because I don't want any misunderstandings. I don't want any problems. I don't want to see like disrespect of any kind. Like, no, we're gonna work on this. I work a little slower, but it helps keep my technique sharp to stop that sort of thing from happening. I don't know what the remedy for that would be in, say, judo. I just don't know what you would do in those scenarios. But at least as far as jujitsu goes, I mean, I guess over time you kind of pick those up. But at least in capoeira, you had something a little more instantaneous.
Yeah, exactly. And building on what you said about like training with women, right? That's one of the things. There's this really amazing person there, martial arts wise. She's a brown belt in jujitsu, and she's trained in capoeira, and she's done Muay Thai. So like she's always focused on technique and all that. I'm like, wow. I can see. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're my role model right there. I gotta do what you do. Like she's like recording the professor sometimes. It's like, and she's always thinking about how to, the moving the hips correctly, etc. And like, that's exactly she to get to a brown belt in jiu-jitsu, she had to learn very quickly, focus on technique, because you're not going to beat people at strength game, especially if you're only 5'4". I think how tall she is, but
Even
and I
yeah,
have
even
a,
more the side disadvantage. Yes.
yeah, and the other flip side of it, I had a friend who started Muay Thai, and there was some girl at the gym who sparred him so hard and kind of concussed him. So you know what he did next time he sparred? He really hit her hard back. And you're not gonna win against that. Like if you're gonna pick on a newbie who is way bigger than you, he's gonna remember that. And the next time he's gonna hit you back very hard. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I got her back. So like that's another flip side. If you don't focus on technique
Yeah,
and
but
you try
that's
to
the
beat people at that game of strength, you're not gonna win. There's always someone bigger. so
I mean, the thing at least with I just the fact that you have the size differential, the strength differential. Um she rocked him and hurt him, but that's just proof of the technique working. You know what I mean? She was better that day. Like, why do you need to put extra vinegar on that one? And like, like that's a big move, man. Like, it
Exactly,
doesn't need to,
especially
it
because
doesn't
he was
need to be
new.
like that.
He
They could
didn't
have
know
just taken
much.
his
So
lumps and been
she's
like,
putting extra vinegar on top of the better technique. Like that's just like low. That just made me so mad when my friends like, yeah, dude, I'm having trouble eating right now because she rocked me a little hard. It's just like that just made me so mad when I heard about it. And yeah, and you just don't want to do that in a gym to new people. One, the new people might not come back, but two, now they're gonna be like, okay, I know who you are. And next time I spar you, I'm gonna overcompensate with strength.
yeah, but I mean, it was a dick move of him to like, hit her extra hard though, too. Like I get him wanting to avenge that, but I don't that part don't really sit right with me. I don't know.
Okay, I mean that's where we'll disagree because again, like I understand it from his view because he's new and she just picked on him, and so next time he's gonna hit her the
Yeah,
same
I get it.
strength, you
I
know.
mean, if it was done from a place of bullying, I get that, but at the same time, like her technique just was better than his that day. That's just a matter of him having to sharpen up his tools in order to do better. I mean, him, trying to get that back, so to say. Nah, well, I don't know. Maybe I don't know enough about it, but it don't. I don't. This doesn't feel right.
Yeah, no, I see your side of things. It's like at the end of the day, okay, well, it's just designed to work on your technique. So that absolutely is correct, but I think she definitely went way hard against him than she should
Yeah,
have. But, you
and
know, part of it is also
people
yeah.
will take liberties with newer and for that. I mean that has happened. I mean, I
Mhm.
happened to me to a degree with one guy in particular, but I don't know that that's really the right way to do it. If if it's a matter of you're not there to just concuss each other. So I
Yeah,
mean,
exactly.
being wrong. That's not.
Yeah, yeah. And one of the things I told my friend is like, don't ever be afraid. If you think they're going hard, just don't spar. Just be like, okay, I'm fine, I'm fine.
We're not
Yeah.
doing this. We're
Don't
not doing.
ever think, okay, I have to finish this round, or I'm a wuss if I don't want to. Don't ever feel that because he probably didn't know that either. So when she started going hard, you can very easily say, hey, can we go softer? And if they
Let's
don't go
slow down.
softer,
Yeah,
just
let's slow
walk
down.
off. You know,
Yeah.
that's one of the first things you have to remember when you start doing combat sports. You got to protect yourself. And some people just they need. I still sometimes need to learn it too. You know, like so. This is just a reminder for everyone. If you're not comfortable sparring this person, don't. I know it's harder done right than said. So it's easier said than done. But it's something you always have to remember because you don't want to injure yourself or injure other people.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you don't want to have to like just from a basic dignity perspective, you don't have to put up with that.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
this person's kind of like, all right, you're just doing this to be a dick. You're not
yeah,
doing this improvement or or anything else. You're just this it's if you're more experienced than the other person and you're engaging in target practice, okay, fine. I mean, that's we're all there to make each other better. And sometimes that's just gonna happen. You're the lower
yeah,
guy on the ladder, you're going to get thumped. And that's you can recognize that. But sometimes when you start like there have been a couple situations I'm like I could have probably just said like hey, we ain't doing this right here. Like, you're not gonna do that again. All right, that's it. And you don't have to spar that person, or you can tell your instructor like, yo, over there, right there, that situation, man. Like, come on. And this it's seen as um some people would have, especially men, are going to have some difficulty with that because of your ego, right? You're not supposed to tattle on them, go, oh, you went over and told teacher. Like, chances are that person's probably doing it to other people too.
yeah,
And that is also a problem. And you
yeah,
probably want to weed that out. If
yeah,
that person can't do better or continues to do so, that says more about them than it does you.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Exactly. And this is a good spot too for anyone watching that wants to chime in because again, like we all know, unfortunately with combat sports, there's the CTE aspect associated with it, right? But it doesn't have to happen. So we're discussing these things just to get people to think about how to train safer for longevity, basically. Like you think about some of those Muay Thai guys that are still having fights in their 70s. How do they do it? It's probably because when they spar very safely. So they're not taking extra damage in their practice.
yeah. And also, your instructor is incentivized to, try to fix that problem early.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you got somebody who's just hurting people and the instructor doesn't do anything about it, your business is going to suffer.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
this is somebody worth a damn, I mean, there are schools where that sort of bullying is encouraged and in fact endorsed,
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate, but you do see a lot less of that now than there was in the past.
Yeah.
But it's you're still try to have some sense of hey, we got to talk. Like, I can't do this. You got to talk to that guy. Either
Yeah.
they go or I go. Something.
Yeah. And funny you mentioned about the differences of culture as the years go by, right? Because I'm watching a boxing documentary right now, and in the 70s and the 80s, one of the most important things they did was, hey, oh, it's fresh meat. Oh, kick his ass, right? That's how it was in boxing gyms back in the day. But then as time went on, we realized, okay, that's not the best way to train people. Don't kick their ass for the first 2 months. That's not good for them. Sometimes they don't come back. But two, is it the best way to learn even? So like these are things that we kind of start learning as the combat sports get more popular. But yes, like culturally, certain old school gyms, they probably still do that. Oh, the new person, let's just show them a little bit.
I mean, I guess it depends on the gym.
Yeah.
I hope that that's sort of dying and going away. It
Yeah.
seems like it is.
Yeah.
I mean, we all heard stories of, fighters that have had situations like that to either see how tough they are, or like maybe the trainer doesn't like their jib. That, they're like, you know what? Hey, let me get, hey, Tommy, go over there and give him something and not come back again. Right, I guess. That story about Hulk Hogan, right? The first day that he went to wrestling school in Florida, Hiro Matsuda's. Matsuda he was a champion judoka and broke his leg that first session. Then a couple of months later, Hogan rose up with his leg all bandaged up, and he's like, "Oh, he came back. Oh, that's like the legend of." Which, I mean, look, it's Hulk Hogan telling the story. Maybe it's not true,
Yeah.
but the point is, that's something that carries a lot of cultural cachet and respect for a certain segment of the population now. But like, if you're younger, you realize how dumb is that?
Yeah.
Guy
Yeah.
came in, you broke his leg just because,
Yeah.
just to see how tough he was, just to what? Because he didn't want to submit to you, like. All right, I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
if dude wanted to keep paying you money to train him, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Man. So Victor, are there any topics you want to talk about since I've been leading with topics?
Well, I didn't really bring anything to the table here as far as I figured. Well, we'll just ride the wave Sergio's got. But you were telling me about this Helvetica business, and I caught a little bit of that on YouTube, and I'm not quite sure what to make of it either.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not
And
I'm not 100% sure I really get what they're trying to go for.
yeah, and here's kind of one thing that I don't understand about them is that there's they have a bunch of fighters with different disciplines, but then they're the one especially that I discovered their videos on, it was like a judo guy versus someone else, but it was just a boxing match. So like both sides couldn't really use their skill set. So then it just became okay, I'm just swinging. Who's swinging better? So
But
like
was it specifically stipulated to be a boxing match?
yeah, yeah, so it was like a boxing match, but then the way they titled it, I mean, I get why they titled it that way because it draws people who are interested in style versus. I was like judo guy versus this guy, and then I watched. I was like, but
Yeah.
it's a boxing match, so how can you see their actual abilities if you put both of them into a discipline? Let me actually show you this real quickly. I
You
can,
really, yeah, I guess. Like, are you really seeing them at what they're best at?
yeah.
Is that
So
really what they're best at? Are they boxers that trained in judo and got a little more notoriety for being judokas? Like, what is that?
yeah, so like let's see. This is yeah. Oh, actually, it's a judo guy versus a boxer in boxing. And spoiler, the judo guy actually wins. So, but like,
Yeah,
so like,
the Kurdish guy and the Albanian. I remember this one. This
yeah,
was this was so the judo guy clearly had some experience in boxing
yeah,
along to go with his judo, which is probably how that happened. I guess it's one
yeah,
of those deals that was like, yeah, this dude is also mostly a judo guy, but he's got some hands too. And see
yeah.
again, look, the ref covered up. Why? Are you the ref from Samurai Showdown? Why are you covering your face? What do you is the child support monster looking for you, or is it something else? I'm gonna tell you something else, man. I'm not too big on the whole
The tires.
no, I'm not too big on the whole deal with the font that they're using with the names. I don't know, man.
Oh,
It's looking a little too much. That when I see too much Viking adjacent stuff, my antenna immediately starts kind of going like, "What are we doing here?" Yeah, this is happening in a Nordic country. Yes, I understand that, and they are having fighters from different parts of the world. But
yeah,
I just don't. I don't know, man.
yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. I see what you mean. Like this type of font, right? It's so funny, like what different people notice. I would have never noticed this, the font stuff. That's
It could be nothing. I could be
Yeah.
reading too much into it. I'm not accusing anybody of anything, but
Yeah.
it's one of those deals where like, look, I can't afford to not notice.
Yeah. I
You know what I
see.
mean? Like I don't really think that's is an unreasonable thing to be concerned about here. But look at these dudes, man. There's a lot of hugging,
Yeah.
a whole lot of hugging. No, they're gassed already, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the end of the first round. Exactly.
Is he wearing a Star Trek shirt? The ref?
I think so. Yeah, that's definitely a Star Trek shirt.
He looks
Yeah.
like he looks like, what was that Sega Genesis game? Moondog or something like that? Or Green Dog?
Green dog.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was the one about the surfer dude who was like based on a real guy. That's what the guy look. That's what the ref looks like with that hat. Never seen Green Dog. It didn't. I don't know. It looked like one of those weird games where like Sega gave their people a little too much freedom, and like yeah, I don't. Didn't look too fun.
Huh.
Did it though?
Green dog, the beach surfer dude. I'm seeing. Yeah. I was in China when Sega was making its rounds in the world. So I Sega was the only game console I never played because when it was popular, I was in China. So
Yeah.
man. Um yeah, I guess I'll I'll talk about one last topic. I think a lot of people, both Bloody Elbow and my viewers, are really curious. What is Xu Xiaodong doing, right? Because our man Xu Xiaodong, he's still making videos all the time, but unfortunately, I think the YouTube algorithm is starting to get to him. Like his videos don't get as many views as before. I feel so bad for him because YouTube's basically his only income right now. And let me show you his channel. For those of you who, I know, if you watch any of my videos, his channel's linked on the bottom, but this is his channel. You unfortunately have to search his Chinese name to find it, but he's almost hit 500,000 subscribers. But like, look at his view count now. It's much lower than before. So unfortunately, I think it's not even throttling. It's just like, okay, he's been on YouTube for a while. Let's promote the new people algorithm. It's like hit him now. Like poor Shu Xiaodong, like he's not getting as many views as before. So Shu Xiaodong's still uploading in case any of you are wondering what he's been up to. No more challenge matches recently, unfortunately.
I'm wondering why that is. Is he just are people just not responding to him, or are people asked not to engage him now? Because I mean, I'm kind of curious as to what, especially with the growth of MMA in China and how well Chinese fighters are doing. You know, I'm curious if this is a deal where like they choose to celebrate the newer guys that are doing well in the modern setting and sort of keep the um, something of a reputation of the more traditional styles.
Yeah,
I don't know if maybe there's I don't know if that's the sort of tone that they're trying to strike, some sort of balance they're attempting to reach.
yeah, I think it's probably that. It's
He seems like the kind of guy who would spoil that sort of party.
yeah, exactly. And on top of that, I think because of all the lockdowns in China, so
Yeah, that well, yeah. I mean that'll help.
yeah. I just remember that time he went to Thailand to fight the Japanese kickboxer. I wish there were more events like that. Or, like if he was able to actually fight DKU, of course, China was pretty locked down at the time. So he wasn't able to go to Korea. And that's why we got the other guy, the Brad guy, to fight DKU. But I wish there were more events like that where Shuyadong could just go somewhere and then just fight someone. So he doesn't always have to fight the fake masters.
Yeah, you know, it would be nice if you could spend like 2 months in Thailand,
Yeah.
you know, at like you know Phuket Top Team or something, or you
Yeah.
know, like, Singha's Muay Thai, and then just do kind of you know, maybe not challenge matches, but have a couple of free show fights.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, against
Exactly.
like you know, like some big fat dude or like a boxer
Yeah.
or like somebody who's you know maybe that's I don't know, maybe that sort of thing will keep him out of uh any sort of notoriety
Yeah.
and allow him to keep making some money. I mean, look, I don't know. I don't think that he's not. I just don't want to see him mess with anymore. You
Yeah.
know,
Me
I feel
too.
bad in that sense, but at the same time, I get what he's trying to do, and I
Yeah.
kind of respect it.
In fact, I really like your idea of why not just organize some freak show fights with him. Like exactly, have him like fight a big fat dude or something, or have him fight some. Like he doesn't have to just fight the fake masters, right? He could just.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and in fact, I recently reinstalled WeChat so I can talk to Xiaodong again. I should suggest that to him. I was like, dude, why don't you organize, or the people you know, why don't you guys organize some other types of stuff that'll be equally fun and get your name out there, but it doesn't always have to attack the kung fu establishment.
Right. I mean, it just, or maybe kung fu, like, or just like other fake gurus in other countries.
Yeah,
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 I just look the way I see it, man. Like, I understand wanting to preserve, um, the integrity of some of the older stuff, and I don't think that his mission was ever to like disparage, traditional kung fu or Wing Chun or like anything else or Sanda or anything. I just kind of feel like maybe, um, a lot of people are taking it that way, but it seemed like he primarily was targeting guys that are teaching bullshit,
yeah,
and not really allowing for their students to have any sort of questioning or like any attempt to modernize or adapt, which is kind of like that's what's drawn me to the stuff that you do, because most of what you cover and most of what is intriguing is look at this guy who has, a more traditional style, but look at what they're trying to do with it, how they're trying to incorporate that into this here or that there, and the manner in which they're doing it. Sometimes it's great, and sometimes they're delusional, and that's life. That's just how things go. That's how things get better. That's how you see in a more, I mean, it's the most scientific thing possible, right? Does this work? Well, we tried it. No, it doesn't. Let's experiment with this. Hey, this seems to be it. Let's refocus and work towards that. Oh my God, it's still successful. And
yeah,
then you continue from there. That is the most the most reasonable way to set things up and move them forward. But I don't know that that's the way that it's being viewed. It clearly doesn't seem to me that that's how anyone in position of authority is viewing what he's doing. He's
yeah.
just seen it as like a hostile attacker to the things that are traditional and celebrate the state.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And kind of on a related note, me personally, whenever people want to show me stuff, with few exceptions, it's always the more questionable people that reach out to me that want to show me stuff. And I'm at this point, like I said in the beginning, I've been sort of slightly career transition. Like I'm not going to ever stop covering fights and training martial arts, but I'm also trying to get better at tech, right? So I'm learning programming, learning IT stuff just because we need it for this world. So I don't have as much time to deal with bullshit anymore. So I've been much more honest with people who either they want to refer someone, they reach out to me. I just tell them, look, I don't have time right now. Like maybe 2 years ago, I had more time. I would have like met with you and like seen your bullshit interpretation of Wing Chun or Tai Chi. I'm being very honest right now. Like, but now I just don't have time. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to come out of it 4 hours later being like, oh, you just wasted my time. You wasted your time. Now I have to justify making a video. I don't want to do that anymore.
Wait. How long have you been doing?
Um,
What is there to show you that you haven't either seen or have some expectation of that you would be like, oh wait, that would be a head turning moment. I'm not saying they aren't out there, but it's like it's. I'm sure that you probably get a lot of stuff that you're just like, like buddy, it's the same hook kick. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like
yeah,
it's the
yeah.
same hand channeling. Like
Or yeah, usually it's the same type of compliance. That's usually what it is.
that's exactly it. So you've already seen the power of suggestion at work ad
Yeah,
nauseum.
yeah,
What are we doing?
yeah,
Like we don't have to do this again. But
yeah,
people don't. People think no. This will be the one.
yeah,
I will be the one to break through and show him this thing, and maybe we'll get some exposure out of it or whatever. I'm sure they don't intend to convert you
yeah, exactly.
to
Yeah,
believing that no, this is the guy who can really like with the power of his mind, stop you from running it.
yeah. Yeah, but it is honestly pretty annoying because, like you said, like how long have you seen my channel been around? You want to show that you're different, but like whatever I can see of yours, it looks the same. What you think I'm gonna waste my time? Like I'm just being honest. Like I don't have the time anymore, and like this is a perfect rant for me to get off my chest because once in a while, just get these people. I'm sure there's people that reach out to you guys too, like trying to show their secret techniques, and it's just so annoying.
Okay, well, two things. So my first question is also, have these people seen your channel? Like, You
Yeah, they
post
have.
this stuff all the time.
Yeah.
So like you saw that guy twirl his finger like this and spin his student around from 15 feet away, and you saw Jerry roast him for that and point out how bad that is and explain, kids, this isn't real. You, sir, what makes you the 198th person to bring this up? What makes you think that you're gonna finally like you see who look at who you're talking to, man? Like you, Jerry's seen it. Let it go, let it die. But this we don't really get too many people trying to demonstrate like techniques or trying to like promote their schools. What we will get is a lot of apparel companies. So I do, I do work with like I mean, so like I do podcasting. I used to
Mm-hmm.
do some moderation. I do a lot less of that now. Somehow they took my moderator powers away. I don't know why they did that.
Uh-oh.
I don't like that too much. But
Yeah.
when it comes to social media, you know, I do some of the work behind the scenes on that, and especially on Facebook, we're constantly getting some textile company in Pakistan trying to sell us athletic apparel. Like we don't sell it. We don't sell any clothes. We have ads that are external, like they're bought and sold from the parent umbrella company that's got nothing to do with us. Like we don't stop trying to sell us more cups and shorts and all this other like I don't know who they think they're like you really aren't understanding our content, are you? You don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was the main through line that I want to get to. Like if you've been here long enough that you feel comfortable enough to reach out to me, then you didn't really do your homework, did you?
Yeah.
And that's now it's starting to bother me a little bit because it's not that hard to find.
Yeah.
It's been there in full display for some time already. You've had your channel for what, 6, 7 years?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had my channel, yeah, for 6 years. Exactly.
There you go. See, I mean, come on. What are we doing? The fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it's also, do you ever, so going along the apparel stuff, do you ever have companies that are like, oh yeah, yeah, go, we'll pay you a little money to kind of help us promote, and they're always trying to undervalue you. Do you guys ever have that with you guys, like the apparel
No,
company?
no.
No.
So I don't know what we don't get, or I don't get too many of those things. Like the Facebook stuff is what you'd expect. It's usually a smaller vendor. But as far as
Uh-huh.
anybody trying to promote stuff on the site, generally, again, we don't deal with that at all. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the deal. We'd have to refer them to someone else. And generally, if they're reaching out to us through those means, that means they're probably not as big a company to advertise with us because we don't touch those. It's the bigger companies, and sometimes it's Google Ads, and sometimes it's directly through Vox and whatever. So I don't know too much more than that. It becomes nebulous to me after that. So we don't really touch any of that at all.
Mm-hmm.
We have no capacity to say yes or no to any of these. What I did think was interesting, there was a company a couple of years ago that tried to advertise with us, and I was actually kind of sad that we had to say no, like off the bat, because they were a CBD company. And,
Oh.
which like back at least in the year in which this was happening, that was a lot more legally dicey.
Yeah.
We kind of had to let them know, like, listen, you can try, but we're gonna let you know straight out. No. But they gave us some discount codes, and they had some pretty good stuff back then. I don't know if they still, I don't know if they're still selling the same products now, but they did have a great CBD vape that served me so well for after drinking, especially.
Wow.
So it was a Bio CBD Plus. Bio CBD Plus. I think they only make pills now. I don't know how. I can't vouch for those, but from past experience, they did great by me. Maybe they're still making great stuff now. I hope they are.
Yeah, it's funny you mention out, as the laws change, right, what can be better promoted, etc. Because for a while there were, let's say, sports betting platforms that would reach out to me, and I was like, but now that's much more just in general acceptable, right? So that's another example.
Yeah, and that could be a thing where like you don't know if you take that sponsorship, if that'll affect your viewership and or shut you down because it depends on where you're being watched, and like you don't want to. Yeah, I see where you would have some sort of hesitancy, but now they'd take that money if they give it to you because it's already there. I mean, unless you have some moral objection to it, which I also understand.
Yeah. One of the funniest things I love when I'm watching any of these fighting sports and they have sponsors that are sports betting is that during the ad they have like a little disclaimer. Oh, if you have a gambling addiction, here's a number to call. They're just so funny, like these little like disclaimers.
That's a liability
Yeah.
matter. They have to. It's like when they give out the side effects in a pharmaceutical commercial.
Yeah.
Side effects may include, drowsiness, diarrhea, death. You're like, wait, whoa. That's the ultimate side effect, and you
Yeah.
try to wedge it in there in the middle there.
Yeah.
And you got to dig that screw out, fam. We
Yeah.
got to discuss this death.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
Ow.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's kind of important for me to know right now. Yeah.
Yeah. The other interesting thing, I assume most of your viewership for Bloody Elbow is in like Canada, US, and stuff like that. Is that kind of how it is?
I mean, most of our viewership, since we are a U.S. centric site, yeah, I mean, we're going to have more of a presence in English speaking countries, UK, Australia. But then we have people from, I mean, literally everywhere, all over the Middle East and parts of Southeast Asia, Latin America too. It's been super pleasant to see how many people, especially the Australians, man. They're the funniest. Them, the Scottish, those are like the funniest people always. And it's really cool to see how they'll have a conversation about a fight, and then there'll be some sort of a discussion regarding cultural differences, and people straighten each other out. You see people kind of like getting hip to certain things. I mean, I've learned a lot of culturally different things that I like. Oh, that's not acceptable. Oh, shit. Now I know. Like, let me not do that or say that if I'm ever in that situation. Like, there's a lot of that, and so it's. I think it's got more to do with the fact that much like soccer, the international nature of the sport, combat sports being a lot less. There's a lot more of a looser thing here where people aren't just cheering a fighter because they're from a certain country. I'm sure it helps in some cases. Brazilian fighters love Brazilian fans love their Brazilian fighters. Mexican fans love their Mexican fighters, but it's not exclusive. Like they're not just going to sit here and watch a fight card because of one person from wherever they're from or part of their social group, but rather, like it's just fandom that develops organically, and you see people like a certain set of fighters for entirely different reasons, and sometimes there are uniting themes, and that's interesting to see as well. But as far as like one particular place, I mean, I guess we got most of our viewership or readership here in the U.S. Um, but there's also the caveat that we are who we are, and I mean that in the sense that we do kind of rattle the cage a lot of the time. It's not so much me like tooting our horn; it's like it's just facts. Um, we've been persona non grata for a lot of organizations, not because we're trying to be snot nosed punks about it, but because unfortunately, um, they're not very happy when we uncover instances of corruption or crime or just straight up like all the shit that a lot of other places tend to shy away from because they don't want to lose access, whereas we're like, what, we're fine without it, as long as we're covering things that are real and true, and we're not getting in any sort of legal trouble regarding it because we can verify through um, you know statements and evidence that what we're covering is in fact has the veracity necessary to pass muster. We're fine, and I'd much rather live with that honesty. A lot of people don't like reading us either. I get a lot of hate online because there's people that like they take it personally, like, oh, they're just people in there fighting in a cage. What do you expect? Like, well, I expect them to be better people than to not go home and beat the shit out of their wife and kids. I expect that maybe, just maybe, if these fighters are getting paid a little better, you wouldn't have so many of them wrapped up in crime rings doing enforcement work for mobsters, or the kind of cheap shit that people were doing with boxing in the 50s and 60s. It just doesn't have to be this way. And then you've got the finagling with the lobbying. How certain most states now are moving towards not disclosing paydays for fighters. Well, yeah, because fighters aren't getting paid right. I mean, that's just another way of obfuscating things because people like us make stinks like the kinds that we make. And that's just it. And then there's people who just don't like our attitude, and that's fine too. There's people that don't like us because we connect the dot between ideology and political movements and how that influences, like what we were talking about with Web3, right? We were talking about how Web3 influences combat sports and Steve Santa. That, like, this is not an isolated thing. You have to pay attention to it because this is directly adversely reacting the lives of the people that are involved on the bottom. And same thing happens, like, oh, keep politics out of this. Like, no, everything is political, whether you like it or not. There's a reason why the UFC kept giving money to Harry Reid for years, because he was their man in Vegas. He was their man in Washington, rather, as part of their Vegas operation. And these are largely staunchly conservative people, but they're giving money to this Democrat. But there's a reason, there's a business relationship there. If you don't see that, I can't help you. If you don't see how making that mini documentary, if you want to call it that, kissing Trump's ass. If you don't see how that is just a cynical political ploy or move, I can't help you. And that belies the thing. And Luke Thomas made that point a long time ago. He said, people say that they don't want to see politics in sports. They're lying. They do. They just want to see their politics. They want to see their shit. When Colby Covington is out there, he's going to the White House with his little interim belt or whatever, and these cats are cheering it, and they're happy about it, and they're like, that's the people's champ. But then Tyron Woodley comments on life conditions in Ferguson, and he gets called every name in the book and death threats. What are we doing? You cannot tell me and sit there and say that, no, this separation, this demarcation needs to exist when you are clearly and flagrantly violating that. Absolutely not. So there's people that don't like the fact that reality does not fall in line with their political views. And when we report on stuff like that, when we talk about stuff like that, fighters being part of hate groups, like, Tara LaRosa offering to train Proud Boys and give them MMA classes in the Pacific Northwest, which was, in fact, this part wasn't covered as widely, but apparently the response to that was a resounding no, followed by get back in the kitchen, which is what happens when you lie down with certain people. You think you're part of the club, they'll let you know you really ain't. And that's what happened to her. But, excuse me, I have to include that tidbit because all of that trickles down from the political structure and the wavelengths around us. This is not something you can ignore. Like Kareem Zidane said, this does not exist in a vacuum. These things will affect things. And if you don't believe it, look at Katarov. I mean, that's you've got a literal warlord who has a gym. This is a G.I. Joe premise. Okay, like this is a 1980s cartoon storyline come to life. A dictator with an army of martial arts dudes, and they're doing having successful careers in various organizations around the world at the highest level. Like, really, you don't think that's worth talking about, worth reporting? No, all right.
Yeah, exactly. And going back to why I asked the question about viewership. So my viewership, besides having US, but it's actually not as much as people think. Like I have a lot of Southeast Asian audience, which makes sense because Southeast Asian people love fighting, right? And I remember I was dealing with this one company that was like, "Oh my God, I'm surprised. Only like 20 to 30% of your audience is in the US. Oh, we're trying to reach all US people." I'm like, if you're a brand that wants to reach people who love combat sports, you can't just only think US. It's pretty funny that certain people still think, oh my God, yeah, like fighting is like a uniquely US thing. It's like, no, it's not. It's like a universal human thing.
I don't understand. Do they have problems shipping elsewhere?
I don't think so because I'm pretty sure they weren't even based in the US. So
I mean, unless there's some sort of tariff or importation problem or some sort of tax or like portuary law that they're afraid of running afoul of, I don't see why they wouldn't want to expand. Like they're only focused on expanding in the US. Like I get why acquisitive power or adhesiveness to the market and all that. Maybe that's a part of it, but like I don't see why you would want to expand your customer base like that. I don't know. Maybe it's priced.
exactly.
Maybe
Yeah,
they
maybe
paid for
something.
they only paid for market analysis in the US. They're like, oh shoot, we forgot that.
Yeah, we
We'll get to
forgot the
them
rest of the
later.
world.
We'll get to them later. We want them dollars first,
Yeah.
Maybe it's
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Man, yeah,
yeah.
I'm looking up Tara La Rosa when you were talking. I didn't follow any of that stuff, but yeah, I was looking up. I was like, whoa,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, she fell off hard, bro.
yeah,
She
I
fell
can tell.
hard, hard.
But
I saw somebody actually speculate. So she had this bit, and I think this was during the pandemic. She was driving from somewhere in the south, heading up to the northeast, and her trailer caught on fire,
oof,
and her dogs died in it too. And it was like, oh man, that's a real shame. Damn,
oof.
she. But somebody has been, well, somebody. There's certain people have been pointing out on social media that she may have done it for the insurance money because she had joked about doing that like a year or two prior. And then it's like, isn't that funny that she's broke as shit? And now she's like trying to, what if she did? What if she didn't? I don't know. Was she
Yeah,
actually insured? And it's one of those deals like, I don't want to investigate this. I don't want to look into it any further. But that's just like, yeah, it seems like the kind of dumb shit that she would say and do, considering the other stuff that she says and does.
yeah,
So,
and I think in general that's a good little kind of like life advice for anyone. It doesn't have to be combat sports, but since we're talking about combat sports, like think about what you're gonna do after you finish fighting, right? You gotta plan your future a little, because the thing about the human body is in combat sports, there's not as much longevity as other career paths. So you really have to do a little bit of planning. So the like when you're talking about like fighters being broke and stuff, man, I'm sure that's like a broken clock at this point. Like we all know so many stories of fighters where like they could have even been champions, but they ended up broke, or they still are broke. It's like, wow, it's one of these unforgiving sports. It's not just unforgiving for like, who wins, who loses. It's also unforgiving with the money. Like you got to figure out how to last into your 60s or your 80s, however long you want to live, and usually combat sports itself is not going to take you all the way there.
Yeah, and you also got to remember, like, in this situation, women's MMA when she was active was not paying much, and I also got to wonder what she was working on while. I mean, she had to have had a job while, or still had some job to make ends meet while she was fighting. I don't know what plan she had or what she's doing now, other than being around, running around with hate groups and letting her brain turn to sludge by watching Fox News and being Q-pilled. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. In general, that's actually a very good PSA. We're doing a lot of PSAs today, but be careful what you consume,
Trying to help you,
media
people.
wise, information wise, man. Be careful.
Nah, but it's also like people don't have, I think that there's also a lack of desire to analyze what media people consume. Like there's people who honestly don't know. Like if you bring up, oh yeah, I watch Fox News, and and you look at them and you're like, really? Like, and they'll actually look at you and be like, well, what's the problem with Fox News? What's wrong? Like they clearly don't know that this is a propaganda arm of it. And which, I mean, okay, all news networks are, but to a degree, but
Yeah.
none is so blatantly beholden to a particular political movement and in a particular class like Fox News. I mean, you have your Newsmaxes and LANs, but they're far more fringe for good reason. But the point is that if you don't really have a starting point to understand why certain media is noxious and wrong and is building an incorrect and improper worldview. Like, look how many people watch Ben Shapiro. They have no idea. Like, I had a guy, actually, I had a friend of mine who I hadn't seen in like a couple of years. And he was like, you ever watch that Jordan Peterson guy? And I had to break down to him, like, dude, that guy, this is not how smart people talk. And I had to like entirely like dismantle some of the larger things so he can have an understanding as to why that is for rubes, and he's an absolute hypocrite, and a lot of people don't have that opportunity. They don't have somebody who'll be able to like parse that and be like, dude, you're falling behind, listen to that.
Man, you bring up some awesome things that, these are topics that we can talk about for hours, because
I'm
like,
not that good,
yeah,
don't give me that
yeah,
much credit,
yeah, I
goddammit.
know. No, but I'm being serious. Like, probably not for this talk, but in the future, definitely we can talk more about this. But just in general, I think this is my last PSA. I've like played a drinking game with PSAs, but just try to keep an open mind. I know sometimes it feels like you know the truth about whatever, right? But always at the back of your brain think, okay, I'm always looking for evidence for the counter. I think that's my last PSA for the day, because I know a lot of smart people who just are so dead set on whatever belief, whatever ideology, that they don't even open up their minds. They're smart otherwise, but like certain things, they just cannot even fathom other views coming in. And it's
Well,
just like it becomes so frustrating talking to them about those things. So usually I don't really talk about those things with them, but sometimes those topics will come up and I'll just be like, okay, there you go again. Everything you're dismissing or trying to deflect. It's like, ugh.
well, you also want to be a little careful with that. You don't want to be. It's good to be skeptical, but not cynical, because then you end up with that whole the person that tries to like. We all know that one guy that tries to trying to make his personality the devil's advocate
Oh
thing,
yeah,
where
like
everything's like, oh, but
contrarian,
what if?
yeah.
But what if? And you're like, dude, that's not like, no, no, like those children died in a fire. Ah, but what if those kids, what if they were really being bad? What do you like? You'll find people that'll take it to a
Yeah.
stupid extreme.
Yeah,
Then you
yeah,
just find people,
exactly.
they
And
play
yeah,
that
I'm
game with
not I'm not
everything.
saying be like that, of course, but
No,
yeah, it's good
exactly.
to
So like you
emphasize
want
that.
to be
Yeah.
mindful of people like that too, because it's
Yeah.
not so much like they're not doing it because debate is healthy. They're just doing it because they have also some kind of worldview, and they're trying to minimize um, a particular item that could be important, or the severity of certain things that are done. And so it just, it's going back to what we were talking about before, is like people not being taught critical thinking
Yeah.
on mass, and how it's sort of incentivized not to, because it just makes you a much more pliable, um, just part of someone who's part of the working force without thinking much. And that's just, a lot of the people who talk to them they talk to other people, they talk themselves into this whole house of like, I'm a free thinker. Really, are you? Because you're still just agreeing with this mass here. You're just trying to think that you're smarter than that, you're above this because you're not using certain terms, or like you're above the fray for whatever other purpose. And that's not the case at all. That's not healthy.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And it's so funny, the type of like contrarian type of personality. I remember just like those people really are memorable, man. The ones who always have to disagree about every. I still remember the one guy that comes to mind. This was more than 10 years ago when I was like visiting some farm with a friend. Like my friend's sister owned the farm, so like he invited some of his other friends, and it's just this guy literally everything you said he would have a counterpoint against it, and it just got so annoying that everyone there at one point he said something really stupid and I just jumped on him and I made him look bad. And then everyone just they almost clapped. I was like, well, he deserved it because literally for days before that, everything anyone said, he tried to argue. It's like so when someone's taking him down, everyone's gonna cheer, right?
Yeah, but it's like, what are we arguing about? What are we discussing? Like, there's people that just do that. Like, one of the things I'd avoid is when I see someone's Twitter bio and it says that I will debate anyone. I
Oh.
just like, no, because that means you'll debate everyone. And sometimes you're just picking fights just to pick them, and I don't have that kind of patience or
Yeah.
time. Listen, I got a wife, I got a house, I got a mortgage. You know what I mean? I got a kid. I got a few jobs. I got shit to do. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to just not have to deal with this determined thing of like, we need to solve this with a debate. Like, no, that doesn't fix things.
Yeah.
That's not it's not a substitute for action, and it doesn't make anything any better.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not into having a dick measuring contest with you on. That's just not what we're gonna do here,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah.
Not for me. And I think that more people have been disabused of that. We've kind of been seeing the whole debate bro thing be a lot less, at least as far as I'm able to observe on Twitter and Facebook. You don't see too many people trying to do that. But
Yeah.
I remember people talking about that shit like they were taking off a glove and going, I challenge you to a duel. Like, yeah, no, dude, I'm not. You're just some sweaty dude in Queens, just like me. You're not doing anything that's gonna change anyone's mind or anything like that. Anyone reads this and walk away the same, whatever conclusion they walk away with is whatever preconceptions they walked into. So
Yeah.
it's like it's very, very difficult. And look, I'm not saying there isn't any sort of use for actual discussion and that there can't be some sort of constructive conversation online, but it's those people that are always, always, always going out there with that hot fire. It's like, no, man, no, you got some growing up to do. You literally touch grass.
Yeah. Yeah. And for people watching wondering why we're so passionate about this, here's what I would say, guys. um I think a lot of people, whether watching fight commentary breakdowns or reading Bloody Elbow, you live in a democratic country, and part of a democracy is you got to be an informed voter, right? And the issue is most people aren't informed voters. So I promise no PSA, but I guess that's my last PSA. Be an informed voter. Go like do research, go learn, because even the documentary, the boxing documentary I was telling everyone about, in there they set a bunch of these boxing figures in the context of the Reagan versus Carter era. And like one of the first things the documentary said is, yeah, most people, I don't remember what the exact line is, but basically they were saying most voters are dumb. And it's like most voters care more about the marketing and the image than the actual issues. And I was like, nah, yeah, as voters, we
That's
have to be informed a little bit.
Yeah, and that's also because the political class has made it to that point, and
Yeah,
and
that too.
this is it's more of a spectacle thing, which is not exclusive to the U.S., but it makes a lot of sense. Um, we are very much an entertainment based country. We see people that are on juries, making decisions based on what they see on Law and Order, which is detrimental, but that's just sort of what happens in the influence and power of media in general, right? Even if it's not intentional, it's just like, hey, we're making this courtroom thriller exciting for the sake of entertainment, but it still sticks with people. That's something that affects folks on
Yeah.
some level. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's just I don't like having it. And look, and I just want to mention this. Like, I guess Jerry and I have a different view from what a lot of other people might, because of the fact that you can be minding your own business and you get that random email or tweet. We're just like, oh god, like, you know what I mean? When you have a certain level of visibility, and I'm not. This isn't like we're big time. We're like, no, just any kind of visibility. Um, and I don't consider myself like a big time writer or anything like that. If anything, I'm very small potatoes. Okay, like I know my place in on this landscape is not major, but even still, you'll get stuff like I write stuff. I would do the Judo Chump series, right? Which is you find a bad street fight or at a sporting event or whatever, something that's kind of funny, but it's sort of combat sports really, like, maybe this dude threw a punch that looked really nice, or this dude suplexed another guy outside a warehouse, which is a piece I did last year. Um, and I've had two instances now where I've written about hockey fights and how bad they are. But I also got to get a little loose, and I'm still like, I don't understand this relationship, this very special relationship that American audiences have with violence, because watching a boxing match or an MMA fight is too violent for a lot of people. But a bench clearing brawl in baseball gets ESPN play for 4 or 5 days, no problem. What is it about this form of violence, unregulated, unsanctioned, and with a higher potential for way more gruesome violence? Somebody can grab a bat and break somebody's skull open. Somehow that is more acceptable than, for example, watching two professionals that know what they're doing put on an elegant display of combat. So I include that observation, and I must have gone a little too hard with it with the hockey pieces, because hockey fans they get so mad. I knew they were defensive. I didn't think they were this. I actually literally one day I pick up my phone after a buzz and I see, you get the email preview, and you think some dude emailed me, said something about, I'm gonna paraphrase here. It was like, why hockey fights are not just important but necessary. And I'm just like, I just swiped it. I'm like, get this. I'm not reading that shit. I still haven't read it. I refuse to read it. I do not give nary a single solitary cupcake fuck. I'm not gonna read it. I don't care, because hey, I understand that you want to straighten this out with me. Maybe you want to have a decent conversation with it. I respect that. I don't think I didn't read the email, obviously. So it's not like the title didn't have some sort of aggressive tone or anything. So, with apologies to that person who wrote it, I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm sorry. My point will still stand regardless of what you got to tell me. You're telling me it's fine to you to interrupt the sporting event so these two just beat each other up for no reason? Does this affect the score? Like, it's some other territorial thing, and I'm sure there's maybe answers to that question. It just does not morally and ethically does not sit right with me.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't allow that in a soccer game.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want my kid playing soccer if he's going to be out here just straight punching dudes in the dome. Like, that's not what we're here for.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
And
just me. No.
my follow up with this is that you think CTE is bad in football. Look at hockey players because of the fighting. Like, there's all these documentaries on some of the most famous enforcers in hockey, and a lot of them died so young. I mean, they looked at their brain. There was so much CTE. There's another ankle to this. But anyone that's interested in this, look this up. Look up CTE in hockey players, especially the ones that we celebrate fighting. Man, there's so much brain damage because, like, the difference between MMA and hockey is that these enforcers in hockey, they might be fighting like once a week, like brawling once a week at hockey games. MMA fighters, they'll fight once every few months or once a year or whatever. Like, the occurrence of these repeatedly subconcussive blows is actually much more in some of these hockey players. It's crazy.
Yeah, because I mean, even in MMA, a lot of gyms have scaled down the hard sparring, made things a lot more. These things are done more sparingly to prevent exactly that, right? You don't want these guys having all these gym wars that they used to have back in the day. You'd hear there were some of the gyms that had that philosophy. We train hard, so we fight easy. Yeah, but to a degree, like you can't make that your ethos and just have these dudes be punch drunk by 35.
Yeah.
Then there's nothing there, when you can actually have a much more successful career and mature as a fighter. And we're seeing that in MMA where some of these older dudes they're crafty veterans. They know their body a lot better by that point because that longevity has allowed them to kind of figure certain things out. And it's not everybody that does that. There's still that burnout within a couple of years, 4 or 5, maybe 6 years. But some guys are able to stretch it out further, and it's because we've changed the way we look at that. That's instrumental.
Yeah, exactly. I think, Victor, this is a great point to stop. We've covered a lot of topics, and it's always a pleasure to have these conversations. So, and viewers both on Bloody Elbow and on Fight Commentary Breakdowns, if you guys ever want to suggest a topic to talk about, you guys can totally in the comments just ask us, what topics do you want us to cover, right? Because I'm sure, like me personally, there's people who want me to cover all these things, and sometimes they're not on my mind because we get a lot of requests. I'm sure Victor gets a lot of requests too. So what I recommend is, instead of leaving a request on a random video and then I might forget about it, like on these podcast type videos in the comment section and both our platforms, you can say, hey, can you talk about this next time, talk about this next. That way, when I think, okay, next talk with Victor, I'll be like, oh, let me check some of the previous feedback on these specific type of videos instead of trying to scroll through the hundreds of comments, be like, oh, which one was a request?
Yeah, and don't email me about hockey. I don't want to hear that shit. Don't send me no hentai. Don't send me nothing. No, just don't. Just hit me up on Twitter instead. Don't email me at all.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't. It's just.
What I would recommend, Victor, is have like a separate email too. So like have like a public facing email, and then so only check it once in a while. Like on Fight Commentary Breakdowns, that's what I have. Like you and I have a private email we talk to.
I'm keeping this right.
You're keeping it simple.
No, you're gonna find me here. You looking? I'm not hiding. I'm right here. I'm right in that same spot I was yesterday, and I'll be here tomorrow too. No spare change.
That's different philosophies with how to deal with the public, definitely.
Well, I don't have you're using this platform on a different scale, whereas I'm just a guy. So it's different. I get what you're and I'm grateful for the suggestion. It just doesn't really just really would be the same for me. I'm just gonna get more ads for dick pills somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
It's all bad. It's like, grow a bigger penis. Like, how do they know? Yeah. How? Who told them? It's bad, bro. I don't like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, cool, guys. So everyone, Victor from Bloody Elbow and Jerry from Fight Commentary Breakdowns. Thank you, guys.